Hold on, what's going on here? Okay, we're back. So yeah, speaking of excitement, I have Chris Ramondelli, 2018 graduate, Master of Analytical Finance. That's what it used to be called. I think I don't know if you were one of them or maybe somebody else that told me, he says, Professor, why are we calling this analytical finance? Isn't all finance analytical? Uh,
Yeah.
right? Did you have issue when you were interviewing
Uh,
with the degree?
Not so much. It was more
Okay.
just how you kind of explain it when you're talking to
Yes.
someone about it.
So you were competing against like quant finance, financial engineering, and you come with your analytical finance, and you had to explain to them that you're actually a quant, believe it or not.
Yeah.
So so why don't you tell us? So Chris, just to be clear, we have you have Yeren, which we can't see, but she's also there, and we have Jag Metzela. So all of them are either in the program or will be attending the program. Ramos is one of them, Andrew, Jack, right? And the others are going to be joining through the process in the program already. So we have a mix of people here. So I guess I invited you over. So I wanted to hear more, how did you, because you were, the NHL is a national hockey league. Okay. So far we've spoken to risk managers, we've spoken to management at asset management firms, and now we are with the NHL. So you've got to tell us how you got there. How did you get your first job, and how did you get there, and what do you do there that is of interest to you? And then you could they will ask you questions.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
So for those of you who I did grad at Lehigh. I played hockey at Lehigh in in undergrad for 4 years. So I've always been a big like hockey fan. But I've also had a lot of interest in analytics, computer science, and finance as well. So what I saw from the program, the analytical finance program, what it was called previously, was a mix of computer science, like coding, and then also finance sort of stuff, which I was really interested in, not knowing so much if I wanted to go into finance, but I like to know those things too because I find it very interesting. um, but kind of throughout my grad program, I also created my own little website using some of the stuff I learned from the computer science classes I took at Lehigh and through the program. And I kind of put my own spin on hockey data because I knew all about it. I had a big interest in it. Started to create my own little website and then connect with people. Basically, what I'm going to say during this is that connections is huge. I mean, it's a really big thing. It's a lot bigger than I ever expected it to be. Um, Even if you're just going to ask people for advice about something, if you want to work on stuff on your own, you know, get someone's feedback about it. Basically, that's what I did. I had my own website and I reached out to a couple people in the hockey world and I was like, hey, what do you think of this? I have this idea. What do you think of that? Um, I just connected with people on LinkedIn. That's basically what I did. If they were in the area, because I'm from New York, so it's easy for me to get into the city. So what I did was I just kind of connected with people, met them for lunch and stuff. I know it's craziness now with everything. Hopefully that can change in a little bit. But basically what happened was I reached out to a couple people from the NHL and said, this is what I'm working on. I would love to talk to you about, the sports and analytic field. So I met with a couple people. One guy said, hey, we have a couple openings. I think you'd be a great fit. So the job was posted the next week. I applied, got an interview, etc. And the rest is history pretty much. I started there in March, right before everything shut down. So I've pretty much been remote at the NHL my whole time there so far. But yeah, I mean, the biggest thing I'm going to say to you guys is, doing stuff on your own, working on your own projects is very important because then you can kind of showcase your skills a little bit more with what you're learning or something else you want to try. And then just reaching out to people. I mean, I thought, when I reach out to people, I was like, oh, these people won't respond. These people won't really talk to me, sort of thing. But, there really are a lot of people out there who will give you stuff. Again, don't just go up to them and say, I want this, I want a job. Kind of, establish that connection first, become friendly with the person a little bit, stay connected with them, reach out to them after a while, even if you don't talk to them, see how they're doing. Just stuff like that. I mean, I found that to be really, really important with, my career pretty much.
Before the NHL though, you did a few things, right?
Yeah, so before the NHL, I did marketing analytics at a company called Analect in the city for a little less than a year. And I actually got that job through a connection as well. So my manager there was a Lehigh alumni who played on the hockey team. So he was like 10 years older than me, but I met him I got a list of alumni who played hockey. I saw who was in the analytics field, and I just connected with them. Again, I mean, you're going to hear like a broken record from me today, but it really is really important. And I can't stress that enough. Really making connections is so important. And you're surprised how it works out with these things. But basically, going a little more in depth into what I do, I'm pretty much a SQL developer at the NHL. So I work with the database that we have of every single stat for every single game that's happened, like the NHL draft just happened, for example. We have all data for that. So it's basically all the historical data we have since 1918 is when the league started. So we have historical data, every single player, even if they didn't play, every single player has data, their games, their stats, all that stuff. So basically, some of what I do is, if you guys whoever watches sports, you kind of see these stats pop up on the bottom and say, this player has done this, how many players have done this in their career or something. And, that's the type of questions that I would answer during games for like broadcast teams, stuff like that too. So it's pretty interesting. But one of my main focuses right now is I'm building a new schema, new database for historical data that is in a really crappy format. So I'm in charge of throwing it all into SQL so it's easily accessible for everybody. I work a little bit with R too, on the side with stuff. But I really found that, having those technical skills with coding and stuff like that is really important too. And it's really easy to work with big data with all that stuff as well, especially if you want to work on your own projects too. I know R is really easy because it's open source. So, you can access it no matter what. But that's a high level. Pretty much when you go into specifics for the all non-hockey people, I mean, it might get a little confusing, but that's pretty much what I do at the NHL. And so, yeah, that's, if anybody has any questions, anybody wants to ask me anything.
I want to say something here. It looks like you love what you do, right? You love this job. I mean,
Yeah.
and you could see that, which you don't always see that in people. And that's something I want to keep highlighting to students is that, okay, yeah, you could answer an ad and you could compete with a bunch of other people. And then you'll get a job that fits the employer's framework and you'll fit it in and hopefully it works. But then there's the other way, right, where you look for your own job, and the way you do that is obviously networking, because then ultimately they know you more than just a piece of paper, and you build something stronger there. I feel that the people that have gone after their own jobs through the network are a better fit, not just do you know how to do this? Do you know how to do that? Okay, great. It's more like but you fit within the institution.
Mm-hmm.
That I think is the advantage of the networking aspects of things. And you're right, don't go and ask for jobs. I mean, that's very crude. And first of all, why would I give you a job?
Right.
Anyway, so guys, asking questions.
Is the retirement of Doc Emrick emotional for the NHL team?
Yeah, I mean, for those of you who don't know, the guy who does broadcasting for the NHL he just retired. He does it on NBC for years and years and years. He's like the voice of hockey, so he just retired at the end of this year. So we've had a lot of stuff, emails popping around and people talking about that stuff. Yeah, I'm a little sad about it, honestly.
On a more serious note, thank you for taking the time. Question about SQL, right? So there's never really like a class where you just walk in and start like SQLing, for lack of a better word. Is that, I mean, I know a lot of guys in here have taken, you know, the basic stuff, know their way around. They get extremely good other than like teaching yourself. So that doesn't make sense, but you kind of self-assessment and kind of going back to the drawing board by yourself. What's the strategy there?
So at Lehigh, I took 2 courses. One was undergrad and one was through the grad program too. One was, this thing was called Sabermetrics. It's in the econ department, and the guy who runs it works at a baseball company, and he actually has you work with data in SQL. So that was like my first exposure to it. I took one class through the math department, who's really good at SQL. If any of you are interested in it, I'm pretty sure he's still at Lehigh. His name is Ping-Shi Wu. He's through the math department, but he works with SQL all the time. So, you know, that he's a good resource for that as well. But I think some of the computers at Lehigh, I mean, I don't know who can access all this stuff now. I feel like things are crazy, but I know at Lehigh there were, like, in the computer labs, they have SQL and stuff. So I definitely took advantage of that and, you know, kind of taught myself. I mean, it's not that hard it's pretty self-explanatory language to eventually get, you know, involved in. There's not like crazy syntax stuff. It's, you know, you get this from this table and so on and so forth. Again, it can get a little more crazy as you go, but pretty much what I found was I had a little bit of exposure at Lehigh. My first job was heavy in SQL, and getting I think I went out for a second. I was just saying that my first job, I was using a lot of SQL, and, you know, that kind of was the big experience for me of using it. But I definitely would say if you can somehow get access and do stuff with that on your own and just teach yourself some things and work with some real data, I think that that's really important too.
Right, going off of that, working with real data, it sounds like you said connections are huge, and the way you got connections were, you know, through LinkedIn and asking for advice specifically about these projects that you're making. So can you tell like a little bit more about these projects? Were they on your own design, or were you going to like an external, like a Coursera, doing their projects, or like were you making it up as you go?
So in the hockey analytics field, there are a couple people, like a couple big name people that do things. They had their own websites and stuff. They do a lot of independent projects and a lot of visuals through Tableau and a bunch of stuff as well. So kind of what I did is, you know, they have their data on their websites, or they say they got the data from this website. So basically what I did was, when I first started out, I said, all right, I'm just going to try to recreate these and work on it my own. And then once I knew how to recreate it, meaning I got some more experience in Tableau and some coding experience, I was like, all right, what other ideas do I have? What other stuff can I show with this thing? So basically, you know, I mean, honestly, it depends on the field, but if there is readily data available and people who have done this before, I would suggest trying to recreate it first and then doing your own thing with that sort of real data and, you know, some of your own ideas. And that's basically what some newer that I didn't see these people do. So.
Right, so you're doing the projects that you see other companies are doing themselves. You're recreating in that, and then you're expanding, like you're taking it a step further. So basically, like you're basically, in a sense, you're assuming you already have the job. Like you're putting your mindset in the mindset of a worker there, and then you're going above and beyond.
Yeah, essentially,
That's
you know,
what it
you're
seems
kind
like.
of, yeah, doing what they do, but also it's like I have the range to do what I want. Like it's not like I have to do this
Yeah.
sort of thing. So I kind of could expand and do different things, or because there's a lot of, I mean, at least for me, there's a lot of hockey. There was a lot of hockey data available because it's sports.
Yeah, it
So all
sounds like
those,
these are projects that you would do normally, like you're excited about, you know, the data and the hockey. So congruent. So
Yeah, I'm sorry. My Wi-Fi is a little shoddy here. So, but yeah, basically, yeah, kind of expanding on those projects that I've seen other people work on was the main focus for me.
right. Thank you.
Hey Chris, I got a question for you, and if you can't answer this, I understand because you're affiliated with the league itself. But with the legalization of sports gambling,
are going in the direction of having analytical guys, like for example, in the booth during the game to help make decisions based on win percentage. Is hockey kind of heading in that direction too, where teams are really looking to take advantage of the numbers to make their decisions? And if so, is that a window for opportunity?
I definitely think so. I know that the one thing that we're doing now is we're partnered with SAP, which so basically talking a little bit about the kind of using the analytics during the game time thing.
What prospects are doing well that former prospects that have worked out really well were doing?
I definitely think so. I know that some people have already worked on this outside of the NHL, kind of independent analytics people. I could definitely see if this stuff works, it will go to, kind of the lower level leagues eventually. And I could definitely see it being utilized by them, because obviously, there's only so much that the eye can see. So having the numbers there all too, I always think is a good blend when evaluating those types of things.
Sort of like the new technology and stuff that you mentioned. So like they mentioned putting like chips and shoulder pads and like putting devices in the pucks and stuff. And as like a data scientist, how do you manage or like see through the data to try to not pull conclusions that might only come from over analyzing data? So like how do you balance having such a large amount of data and sort of pulling meaningful things that actually like hold true in the long run and aren't just kind of like over analyzing data sets?
Yeah, so that's actually something that we're dealing with right now, because we're working through a third party is like gathering all this data, and they're in charge of the technology itself. So we're kind of in charge of ingesting the data and finding conclusions from that. It's a little tough. I mean, especially the biggest issue we find is with like speed data, like how fast a skater is going or the puck is going, because there are times where it will read something that's like a player went from 14 miles an hour to 25 in like a half a second, not even. Like, how did that happen? Is that even right? Is it not right? And it goes back down. So there's kind of ways, we're kind of exploring ways to look at it. We're looking at like maximum, averages, percentiles, like anything that kind of looks cleaner. But also on their part, they're they have bugs in their stuff, so they're trying to figure it out. I mean, it's kind of a test it and see sort of thing at the moment right now. We're in the process of making an algorithm where it's like, all right, well, if something increases like this, we obviously know it's not right, so we're gonna just kind of cut it out, sort of thing. So it'll be interesting. I mean, it's definitely something we're working on right now, because we don't want to overanalyze all of these numbers, and then we don't want to share it with a broadcasting team or fans and them going, wait, this doesn't make any sense. Why are they using these numbers? So, I mean, it's something we're working on right now. I mean, someone who I was working with yesterday was telling me about all of this stuff and asking the exact same question that you are right now. So it's definitely on all of our minds at the moment.
Quick question about kind of the contrast between what FIFA's done with like Goalline Technology with the ball, and then obviously, the whole offside rule with the skate has to be on the ice now, and obviously the whole puck crossing the line for goals. The question is kind of like, can that same technology just be copy and pasted over into the NHL, kind of with skates putting sensors in the ice or on the blue line, pucks, kind of creating a matrix on the goal line the way they do it in FIFA? Kind of what is that looking like? What do those technologies look like?
So they're definitely talking about it, because there's been a lot of success in soccer with that type of technology to analyze the data basically, and financial data I think is very, very cool and very interesting. So kind of for me, it was my interest in finance, and then also wanting to see and do analytics in a different field, basically, because I was working on it with, I was taking a lot of statistics classes and computer science classes, and we weren't really working with that much like real data and stuff like that. So basically, I saw this as an opportunity to work with some real cool data in finance, learn more about finance. Obviously, if that turned it into me wanting to work in finance, great. But if not, I had that experience and I was able to talk to people saying, oh, I worked with this data and we did this sort of thing and this thing. And basically in a lot of the courses, we had our own little mini projects we had to work on with real data. So I always found that as a good opportunity to work with things. I mean, it's really hard to, I think, be in a program and be able to work with some real data and some big data sets. And I think in finance, it's really cool to work with all this stuff. So it was more for me to get experience working with real data. And I love finance. Like, I think it's really interesting. And I love that I learned a lot of stuff in the program about finance. But for me, again, it was more of the analytical side for me. And then obviously, still I took the skills that I learned in all of these classes with all the analytics classes as well. And I was like, all right, well, where can I use this sort of thing? So, I mean, then again, it turned into connections and networking and stuff like that. But that's basically my idea of when it all started.
So it was more about the actual skills you learned in the class rather than the name or title of the degree.
Yeah.
All
yeah.
right, cool.
I saw the opportunity in the courses that were in the program for me to kind of hone my finance, interests, but also my analytical skills.
Were you just quickly, do you feel disadvantaged, like being against, if you were competing against data scientists versus now you have an analytical finance, did you feel any disadvantage, or were you like, we learn the same things, like it's just a branding of degree? Did the data scientists have like an edge, or did you feel that it didn't matter?
It didn't really cross my mind that it mattered so much, because it was more or less if I knew how to do these things. And also on the side, again, as I said before, I was doing my own projects and stuff. So
Yeah,
I think being able to do that sort of thing really showcases that you know all of this stuff. Like, you could do what a data scientist does because you have all of these, projects that you're working on your own. And I think those are really cool things to showcase, because when someone sees that, they go, oh, this person can do this stuff on their own. They're really interested in what they're doing. They're doing stuff outside of just schoolwork. So I think that was really important, especially when making connections with people and networking.
So you said obviously you have to show them that you made a project. You said you had a website. Was that the primary medium of you like marketing yourself? Like, okay, like I know how to do these showcase your skills, right? Was it your website? Was it GitHub? How did you let them know?
So I basically just, so first of all, when I was reaching out to people, I was just showing them like visuals and stuff. I didn't create a website. Then eventually someone told me, hey, you should house these things somewhere. So I didn't have a GitHub page. I just had a website that I connected with, I connected it to Tableau with some visuals that I was working on. But then on the back end, I had some, R code or some SQL code that I had before that I was working on. But I also put those on the website kind of as like if you want to see how this is done or what I did, here's this. It's connected to this visual, so you kind of can see both at the same time. And then eventually when I started to talk to people, I was like, hey, I'm interested in hockey analytics. Like, this is what I've worked on so far. I send the website and I go, if you have any feedback, I would love to hear it. It kind of, some people respond, some people don't, obviously, but I kind of felt like housing all my projects in one area. It doesn't have to be just a website, even if it is a GitHub or something like that too, for someone else to look at it and recreate what you're doing. I think that that's really important because, you know, then everything's in one place. They're not looking at like a file you email them or something. They're just like, all right, here's a link, go here. So I found that to be very easy.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay. I think we were basically done. No more questions. So, Chris, thank you very much for your time here. I think you had some most interesting question, I have to say. And you probably are my best ambassador right now for networking, which people sometimes don't really understand what it really is. It's not, you know, going to LinkedIn and say, hey, I'm graduating. Let me know if you have an internship or a job for me. Thank you. It's you have to show several faces of yourself. Anyway, thanks a lot for your help, and we'll be in touch.
Yeah, of course. And guys, I'll send my email to Professor Zorro and, you know, my number, if anything, you know, if anybody has any questions, any follow-up questions, or they just want to network or talk or anything, want any
Hey,
advice.
do these guys actually offer like internships and things like that within formally or?
They do. I mean, obviously, I don't know what's going to happen next summer yet.
Okay.
But yeah, I think they're expanding. So this kind of analytics field is definitely expanding. So I definitely see the opportunity for stuff like that.
Sure. All right. So I'll be in touch then.
Sounds
Thanks.
good. All right. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.